So you start at -3. It takes it 4 seconds to get back to where it started. So that would mean that it would be at the highest point halfway between that at 2. It would be at 1 here, at 3 here, and that pattern will continue there. So, so your graph should look like this. The period for this graph is 4 seconds. Amplitude is going to be 3. That's your distance from your midline to the highest point. So, your equations. I think these are wrong. I think I need to fix them. Actually, I think this first one's good. The sine. I might have to look at that one. Alright, this is the one I really want us to see that. You could use sine or cosine here. If you use sine, you have to shift it to the left or the right. So cosine doesn't work perfectly either, because cosine should start or have a y-intercept at a maximum point, and this has a y-intercept at a minimum point. But if you just put a negative right here in front of your graph, what does that do to the graph? It flips it upside down, so it'll make all your maximums minimums and your minimums maximums. So I think that this is the easiest way to do the problem. That way you don't have to shift it left or right. You will have no midline change because the midline is still the x-axis. You could have -3 cosine, and then you've got pi over 2 times x. You might have 1/2 pi right there. To find that value, you know the period needs to be 4. So you could do 2 pi over x equals 4, or b. I use b usually there. And so if you cross multiply, you get 4x equals 2 pi. You divide by 4, and you get pi over 2 for that, or 1/2 pi for that. So this would be what I would prefer. Did some of you use sine instead? Okay, so if you use sine, you're going to have y equals 3 sine. Period will still be the same, so you'll have pi over 2x. And you've got to have a phase shift here. And so sine normally would have a y-intercept at the midline, so it would need to shift to the right 1. So you would have c divided by pi over 2 should equal 1. I was doing something different here whenever I did that. And so whenever you do that, you would have cross multiply here, and you would get c equals pi over 2. So you would put right here where that plus c is at, you would actually put a minus pi over 2. So that sine equation right there would also work. 3 sine of pi over 2x minus pi over 2. That would be correct also. Okay, questions? All right, and so once you get that worked out, you're just going to plug in the numbers. And for 5, you should get 2.121 meters above the equilibrium point. You're just plugging 2.5 into your equation. Make sure your calculator is in radian mode, because if it is not in radian mode, then it will give you something different. And then for 6, you should get -2.772. Okay, questions on the front side? Okay, we'll let you guys work on the back side. It's a little bit trickier to set up. Let me ask you this about the back side. What's the lowest point you're ever going to be on the Ferris wheel? 3, because you know, whenever you go to the fair and you get on the Ferris wheel, you got to go up a few steps to get there usually. They don't usually have your feet dragging the ground as you go around. You're a little bit above the ground. So the lowest you're ever going to be is 3. That's your lowest point. What's the highest point you're ever going to be at? 43. Okay, so use that to help you decide where everything else falls. So your graph should look like this. The lowest point should be at 3. The highest point should be up here at 43. Midline at 23. I think I numbered my y-axis differently than what you have there, but your points should be at those same points. Midline is 23. We've already talked about that. Amplitude is 20. As I walked around, it looked like most of you had 20, which is good. What do you think students usually do wrong if they get the amplitude wrong? What would you guess that they might do? Something we would never do, but those with lesser intelligence might. What I see a lot of times here is students use 40 right there. 40 is your diameter of the Ferris wheel, but they don't really think about the situation really closely, and they use 40 instead. They're thinking radius whenever they think of 40. A lot of times that'll cause them to miss some of the other parts too, but make sure whenever you see like that diameter, you got to cut that in half for amplitude. But all of you guys did that right. Period for the graph is 8 seconds. So your equations that you should get. I think cosine is the easiest to use here because all you got to do is flip it upside down for it to fit. So I would use negative cosine of, and you should have pi over 4x plus 23. And so to get that pi over 4, we'll have 2 pi over, I used b most of the time whenever I was doing the notes with you guys, but here I used a. That'll equal 8. And so if you cross multiply, 8 equals 2 pi, divide by 8, you'll get pi over 4. So that gives you your value for the period of the graph. And then you would be finished if you use cosine here. Okay, questions on that part? For sine, the period part would be the same, but if you use sine, you would have to use a phase shift. So you would have to shift it, if you use sine normally begins at a midline, so you would have to shift that to the right too. So you would have to do c divided by pi over 4 equals 2, and then if you cross multiply, 2 times pi over 4 would give you pi over 2. So it would look like this if you chose to use sine. Questions on that part? Okay, and for the last one, you should get 37.142 feet for that. So just plug in 11.